Welcome to episode number 293 of the Beyond Social Media Show, the podcast for all of you marketing, advertising, public relations, and communications professionals. You can find us by searching for Beyond Social Media Show. We are recording on January 23, 2019. A ton of things to talk about this week as usual, including Angelina Jolie's media literacy project. Mr. Peanut dies. Shelter Dog Brews, Verizon's One Search, Golden Kitty Awards, Google Podcast Timestamp Sharing, Apple TV Podcasts, Morning Brews Podcast Lessons, YouTube PTSD, Fraudulent.govs, Apple's Encryption Backdoor, Golden Kitty Awards, YouTube, I already got that one. BL kicks it off with the best story of the week. BL, what do you got?
Well, I think the Angelina Jolie story. Oh, hello, Lucy. The Angelina Jolie is teaming up with BBC to produce a TV series on how kids over the age of 13 can spot fake news. So this is from a Variety story by Brian Steinberg, and she's the executive producer, and it's going to explain the stories behind the news and then offer facts and information so that kids can make up their own minds on these issues, pressing issues. And it's a weekly half-hour show, and it's going to be on BBC World News, and it's the most watched channel that BBC has, and it's airing Sundays at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. And it's cool because its content is going to be shared with BBC's 42 different language services and available via YouTube and BBC iPlayer in the UK. And each broadcast is accompanied by a learning segment and a lesson plan that's going to be made available through Microsoft Education. So I think it's a very interesting project. I don't know how Angelina Jolie became the person doing it, but I think that's admirable.
Because she is a celebrity?
Yes, I guess that's, and I guess that teenagers like her.
Well, that's cool. That's good. That's good. But speaking of fake news, this is a fake news story that everybody's buzzing about, including E-Online. Jess Cohen writes about the untimely, or maybe timely, demise of Planters' Mr. Peanut mascot. The Twitter account for Mr. Peanut was renamed The Estate of Mr. Peanut and tweeted out this message. It is with heavy hearts that we confirm that Mr. Peanut has died at 104. In the ultimate selfless act, he sacrificed himself to save his friends when they needed him most. Please pay your respects with hashtag RIPeanut, rip peanuts, right? The Twitter account displays a monocle with a teardrop icon, and this announcement is accompanied by a 30-second spot that dramatizes the tragedy. It's an ad that will be re-released during the Super Bowl pregame show. And then during the third quarter of the game, Planters will air the official commercial, which will broadcast Mr. Peanut's funeral. So there are people have been tweeting about this, obviously. BuzzFeed's Christopher Hudspeth recorded 15 tweets on the death of Mr. Peanut, including, these are the best ones, the top three in my opinion. Patrick Monahan, who tweets that Mr. Peanut is in hell. He spent decades as the smiling face of a company that sold the boiled and roasted corpses of his people as a snack. Thor Benson tweets, Planters CEO, what's your marketing plan? Marketing guy, I think we should kill Mr. Peanut, haha, JK. CEO, let's do it. Marketing guy, what? CEO, kill him. And then Sap tweets, Mr. Clean is lamenting the death of Mr. Peanut And now I'm not sure what's real anymore. I just need Mr. Coffee to tell me things are going to be all right.
That was my favorite.
Everybody is using the hashtag RIP. So I think this is, I don't know, from what I've read, I can't tell whether they're actually killing off the mascot of Mr. Peanut, and they've decided this is the way to do it and go on with a new marketing strategy. But if they're killing off finally and forever Mr. Peanut as the mascot, this is the most brilliant way of doing it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
The earned media is huge, and people are going to be paying attention to the Super Bowl ad. So
another brand that just killed off its iconic representative is Fig Newtons. They're not called Fig Newtons anymore. They're just called Newtons. What the hell? You know, like what a bad idea. And so they have like apricot Newtons and they have strawberry Newtons, but they're all just called Newtons. And
well, I mean, is fig? I don't even know what a fig is. Is fig a
fig
flavor?
Fig is a flavor. Fig is a fruit.
Okay, so
Fig is a delicious fruit.
That makes sense, though. If they're gonna expand the flavors, it's not just gonna be fig anymore. It's gonna be a bunch of different. That makes sense.
No, Fig Newton's been around forever. No,
right, but
silly.
So do they have a mascot?
No, they have a fig cookie.
Okay.
You know, but the Mr. Peanut thing could turn out to be a little like the new Coke.
Okay. Well, my girlfriend was like, I don't like it. I don't like the fact that you're laughing about it.
Yeah, right. I don't like it either. I agree. So I have a nice one. Nobody died for this one. There's a brewery in Florida that is featuring local shelter dogs on the labels of its lager. And two of the dogs were adopted on the very first day. This is from WTSP, and the reporter was Dale Greenstein. And it's Motorworks Brewing, and it's using its Cruiser Golden Lager to get dogs adopted around Tampa Bay. And the pups are right on the labels, which were donated by Tech Label in Largo, and each one features a dog at Shelter Manatee. And the beer is sold in 4-packs for $9 and 24-pack cases for $40, and it's so popular that they might have to brew more.
I saw that. I was going to put that in the show notes, but you beat me to it. That's a fantastic story.
Yeah, you beat me to Mr. Peanut. What am I going to do?
Yeah, well, I don't have anything to add to that except that one of my favorite beers is Flying Dog Brewery. So there's dogs there.
I think I met the guy that started that.
They were one of the first microbreweries who did a really good job of marketing themselves.
I'm pretty sure that I met that guy
back in the day. All right, yeah. All right, very good.
Yeah.
So nothing to do with beer, but you may be able to find some beers through this. This is a new search engine is on the market. Verizon has revealed that they've got a new search engine called OneSearch. This is from Ars Technica's John Brodkin, who reports on the new search engine. It is the actual search results are actually coming from Microsoft Bing. So there's that. So it's not actually a new search engine, but Verizon is saying that there are several privacy-focused features that will be incorporated in the search engine while retaining the ability to serve ads. The quote from the announcement says, to allow for a free search engine experience, OneSearch, which is the name of Verizon's search engine, OneSearch is an ad-supported platform. Ads will be contextual based on factors like search keywords, not cookies or browsing history. So they list the privacy features of the search engine, one of which is no cookie tracking, retargeting, or personal profile. So to that I say cookies are going away anyway, so right. Okay. Retargeting, personal profiling, fine, I understand. I guess that's retargeting in particular. I guess that's unique. Second, no sharing of personal data with advertising. I don't know if anybody is doing that already, so I don't think any of the other search engines.
I believe Firefox is doing that.
Sharing, well, search engines. Sharing personal data with advertising.
Firefox is a search engine.
No, Firefox is a browser.
Okay.
No storing of users' search history. So Google does that. My response to that is it's likely to make the search results less relevant to you. So I mean, if you're concerned about that, I guess that's a legitimate thing. But so the search engine homepage for Verizon says OneSearch does not use cookies, period. And then Ars Technica points out that Chrome detected that OneSearch did set a cookie on the reporter's computer. So that statement seems to be exaggerated. And then the Electronic Frontier Foundation's Privacy Badger detected a potential tracker that's tied to u.yimg.com domain, which is the image server for Yahoo, which would indicate a connection between OneSearch and Yahoo's image service. And then what Verizon apparently means is that they don't use cookies to build ad targeting profiles. So, I think this is more of a PR thing. Verizon, I'm a Verizon customer. If I use their OneSearch on my mobile app, they will be able to identify whatever I do online because I am they are my ISP through my mobile, through my phone. So my IP address will tell them everything about me anyway. So
Well, my question is, do we need another search engine? Honestly,
well, we don't.
I mean,
one that's less accurate to boot.
Right, exactly. Like, what's the point?
But if you want privacy, there's already DuckDuckGo. So
yeah,
interesting, but yeah, whatever.
So I don't know if you follow Product Hunt, but this is from Product Hunt Daily, and their Golden Kitty Awards, which was an annual event. The voting is on right now for the Product Hunt Best Product of 2019. And there's like 20 different categories. You can vote until the 28th, and you'll find amazing, fantastic new products, apps, websites, and lots more that you may not have seen yet. So Product Hunt is a place where product-loving people share and then geek out about the latest mobile apps, websites, hardware projects, and tech creations. And the Golden Kitty Awards, the winners are selected by the community, so cast your vote. Results are going to be announced January 28th, and Lucy's leaving.
So I had never heard of the Golden Kitty Awards. Why are they called the Golden Kitty Awards?
I have no idea. Honestly, I have no idea. But there are some really phenomenal. I mean, you can really just get lost in all the wonderful things that have been launched site. There. Yeah. It's a great site.
Yeah. So I have a bunch of podcast stuff to talk about, but the first of which is real quick. This is from 9 to 5 Google's Abner Lee, who reports that Google Podcast now has added the ability to share podcast content deep link within a podcast. So you can share by timestamp directly from the Google podcast player. You have to go to the full episode page, but within that, it has the sections of a podcast that are talked about and the share button by those sections. So you can share out just within a podcast a certain segment that interests you. It adds a timestamp parameter to the URL of that share then, so that is something you can presumably be able to track through Google Analytics or through the podcast app or whatever. But fascinating new development, and demonstrates Google's ability to index audio content now too. So
I don't understand, where does the timestamp come from? We put the timestamp in, or is that coming from a transcript?
Google has already been doing that automatically. So they are already indexing the content of podcast episodes within the Google universe. So they suck in the content, they timestamp the content, and based on Google's own indexing of it, they know where certain topics are within a podcast, so they can add a URL that is timestamped.
So this is different than when we timestamp our
Yes.
own content.
Yes.
This is something that's happening in an algorithm.
It is something that's happening within Google's indexing of audio content. But I would guess that best practices would dictate that you timestamp your own content to help Google understand it. So, you know, we upload our podcast to YouTube, and timestamping that content within YouTube would presumably help Google understand that content better. So when it comes to their indexing on audio, there would be a correlation.
On the ones that I timestamp, we generally do get better search placement and more views.
Sure.
So I should do that every week.
Yeah. All right. So you got another one?
I do not. I've given you
right.
all my good news.
I will take the reins then, because I got a couple more. Here's another podcast one related. This is from Bloomberg, and Apple is planning to do some original podcasting. So they apparently sent out a request for pitches last summer, asking podcast producers to pitch ideas for podcasts that are related or have some connection to their Apple TV Plus programming, their original programming. I think it's a really smart move. So I'm a big fan of The Talking Dead. AMC's The Talking Dead, and after every episode they have, or I'm sorry, I'm a big fan of The Walking Dead. AMC's The Walking Dead.
A new show.
It isn't. Well, it is a companion show. So AMC's The Walking Dead is the zombie show, and immediately after The Walking Dead, they have another show called The Talking Dead, where they talk about the show. And so this is a phenomenon with popular shows. People like to talk about TV shows. It's the old around the water cooler conversations, right? But as a formal television show. So that's what Apple's doing here. Apple, it seems to me, they've got the newly launched Apple TV Plus, which has a handful of programs. Presumably they're going to add a lot more. But in order to get people to enjoy that content, they've got a built-in distribution network with Apple Podcasts, but it also helps lock in users to both Apple Podcasts and Apple TV Plus. So if you're a fan of one of the shows on Apple TV Plus, you're more likely to listen to a podcast about that show and get locked into Apple Podcasts as a result, right? So it's a kind of self-fulfilling virtuous circle in Apple's eyes. Apple TV Plus has several shows now after launch. They're a handful. They're not a lot. The inventory is nothing compared to Netflix or Amazon Prime or Hulu, but they do have some really good shows upon launch.
They just started, so
they did. Yeah. The morning show has Jennifer Aniston and what's her name?
Now I'm not going to remember, but that's a really good show.
It is fantastic. I've been watching it. For All Mankind is about if the Cold War never ended and the race to dominate space between the U.S. and USSR. There's C, which is kind of a fantasy. It's a fantasy show where what if after the apocalypse everybody went blind, and it's good, but it's got you have to really suspend your disbelief in some of the parts. But then the last thing, I haven't watched this one yet, but Oprah's book show is on Apple Plus, and that's just tailor-made for a podcast, right? So we'll see how that works out, but interesting, and I think a smart move on Apple's part.
Yeah, I got a year of Apple TV when I got my new phone, and I just have watched a very little bit. But speaking of The Talking Dead, this past week, scientists managed to take a mummy from the year 3000 and recreate his voice. Yeah. They made somehow he was intact, and they made his voice box was intact, and they made a 3D replica of it, and they could reproduce his voice, but the only thing he says is it's so creepy.
That's exactly what mummies say, so of course. You have watched the Mummy movies, right? That's how they talk. So
okay, well, there you go.
Sounds like it's accurate.
It's so creepy.
So lastly, in the podcast realm, this is from Morning Brew's Josh Kaplan on his Medium account, who writes about so Morning Brew is fantastic newsletter driven content studio. With a handful of newsletters, but they recently launched a business casual podcast, their first ever podcast. They launched it on September 24. 3.5 months later, they have over 1 million total downloads. Now, of course, they have a huge mailing list, so they've got a head start among everybody who's starting from scratch with the podcast. But on this, they listed in this post, he lists how they got there and some lessons they learned along the way. And one of the foremost, I'll just cite a few of them. Foremost is creating the right calls to action in their content. So one of the things they say is explain your show to yourself so listeners know what to say when friends ask what their favorite podcast is. So that's something that we probably should be doing, right? Mm-hmm. Be greedy, ask for listeners to share. So, if you like the Beyond Social Media show, please do share it with your friends and family members, people who you think might like it as well. Following on social or signups for newsletters are much more valuable conversion because it allows you to create that relationship with your listeners and then test different calls to action. There's a bunch of other stuff. We'll put links in the show notes for it, so for people to read the rest. But it's really good guide to some of the lessons that they learned in growing their podcast.
I must read that article. That totally sounds like a worthwhile way to spend some time.
It is.
So that brings us to worse news, huh?
It does, yes.
Well, this is really kind of sad. This is from a Casey Newton story in The Verge, and he did an investigation, and he's just so good at those. And he wrote about how YouTube moderators are being forced to sign a statement acknowledging that the job they do can give them PTSD. And he was the one who wrote the remarkably detailed story about the Facebook moderators who were, suffering from mental illness as a result of looking at the horrible things that they have to filter out every day. So Accenture operates a moderation site for YouTube in Austin, Texas, and they made workers sign it on December 20th, 4 days after The Verge published an investigation into PTSD among workers at that facility. And they said signing the document is voluntary, but 2 current employees told The Verge that they were threatened with being fired if they refused to sign. I understand the content I will be reviewing may be disturbing, the document says, and it's titled Acknowledgement, and it was distributed to employees using DocuSign. And it said, it's possible that reviewing such content may affect my mental health, and it could even lead to post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. I will take full advantage of the We Care program and seek additional mental health services if needed. I will tell my supervisor or my HR people advisor if I believe the work is negatively affecting my mental health. That's what they made them sign. So the statement comes at the end of a 2-page acknowledgement form, and it has a thick black border around it that shows how important it is. And it may be the most explicit acknowledgement yet that content moderation can be dangerous to your mental health and have severe mental health consequences. So the form describes various support services available to moderators who are suffering, including a wellness coach, a hotline, and a human resources department. But the wellness coach isn't a medical doctor and can't diagnose or treat mental health disorders, according to the document. It also, and this is the bad part, it seeks to make employees responsible for monitoring their own mental health and orders them to disclose negative changes to their supervisor. It instructs them to seek outside help if necessary. But it adds, no job is worth sacrificing my mental or emotional health, and this job is not for everyone, which is basically language that suggests that anybody who has mental health struggles because of their work doesn't belong at Accenture. It doesn't state that Accenture will make reasonable accommodations to the employees who become disabled, and that's a federal law requirement. Labor attorneys told The Verge that this language could suggest that employees could be terminated for becoming mentally disabled, and that's illegal. So Hugh Barron, who's a staff employee with the nonprofit National Employment Law Project, said it's like reverse psychology, getting workers to blame themselves for any mental health struggles they have as a result. And he's saying, like, you just can't eliminate the burden that you have to provide safe working conditions. So I don't think this story is over. I think it's far from it. And Twitter doesn't have a document like that, but every social media platform that has moderators going through content and deciding, what's too horrible to show, somebody's looking at that. Human beings are looking at that, and it begins to become very upsetting.
Yeah. I want to agree with you that this is a story that is not going away anytime soon.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about this, because it's like, obviously, if you've got humans doing the moderating of the content, you haven't figured out how algorithms can do it sufficiently or effectively. So this is basically how you start to figure out how an algorithm can start dealing with the problem, by having humans identify the problem, right?
And they have many people doing this. This is not like a few people.
And so this is a problem that society has never come across before.
Like
so
many, yeah.
How do you solve it? It's curious to me. There's so many different angles to this story. It's curious to me that that YouTube has outsourced this function to Accenture, right?
Yeah.
It seems to me like a distancing of the responsibility for
all the way around. Absolutely.
Right. And yeah, there's probably too much to talk. I don't even know where to go from here. But like I said, I don't know how I feel about it, because I haven't thought through it all. But
it's a very complex issue,
yeah.
And there are people suffering, and that's really something's got to be done about that. But to blame it, to not provide the care that people need, and to basically what they seem to be saying is, if this happens to you, you can't have your job anymore. Well, of course, when you don't have your job, you don't have your benefits. So that's a pretty serious issue. And should every company now be providing mental health care, and what's the stigma of that? And it's a very complicated issue.
Well, it also
sad story.
It also seems like this was, clearly this was a reaction to news, right? This was we need to do something because the story came out. Is it that they didn't, this is just something they didn't think about yet, because this whole dynamic, this whole kind of situation is new and people haven't thought through it yet? I'm kind of willing to not necessarily give the benefit of the doubt, but to give some leeway to, well, we didn't even know.
I disagree with that, because the Facebook situation is well known, well reported, has been talked about for years now, and there have been class action suits. So it's not something they didn't know about, but it is something that they didn't think all the way through. And it's also, there's a level of cruelty here in not providing mental health care.
Yeah, well, there's a level of cruelty in any large organization. So.
That's for sure. And from what I hear, Google's got a high level. But anyway, that's a story we'll undoubtedly talk about again.
Yeah, well, this is not nearly, well, I don't know. This is not nearly as I don't know,
juicy.
Yeah.
But it was a really good reporting by Casey Newton.
Yeah. So it surprised to me. I didn't even think. This is an article, Gizmodo article by Adam Clark Estes, who reports that .gov domains are not necessarily what you think they are. This is based on an anonymous hacker who reported or leaked or made contact with security reacher Brian Krebs, who writes the Krebs on Security blog, that this hacker was able to secure a .gov top-level domain in a kind of shockingly easy manner. So the source just had to complete a form, and he used a Google Voice, a fake actual Google Voice account that he didn't tie to himself, obviously, and a Google Voice number and a Gmail account, and then a forged document with a town's letterhead to obtain control over the domain name exeterri.gov, which is the domain name for the town of Exeter, Rhode Island. So the quote, one of the quotes in the article is, I never said it was illegal. It was just that it was easy. The source told Krebs. I assumed there would be at least an ID verification. The deepest research I needed to do was Yellow Pages records.
God.
So the article points out that lying in order to register a .gov top-level domain likely constitutes wire fraud. But of course, that's not going to be an impediment to foreign agents hoping to spread misinformation. So imagine Russia getting a control of a local municipality's domain name with a .gov top-level domain in, let's say, Ohio or Pennsylvania or Wisconsin or some other swing state, and spreading misinformation via that website that they create under that domain. And nobody thinks that, you know, it's a .gov. You presume that there's all these safeguards in place to prevent somebody from obtaining the .gov domain illicitly. And so you assume the information on that site is accurate.
You assume incorrectly. You know what assume means, right?
Exactly.
What our mom told us. That is really frightening.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, that's right up there with the worst it can get, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, and who's to say that's not happening as we speak?
Right.
You know, I mean, to say that there are not foreign agents involved in our internet and in our social media and in our news cycles is foolhardy. Of course they're there. They're not going anywhere.
Right, but how do you figure out? I mean, you need to actually go to more depths of research to find out whether this .gov domain that looks legit from all appearances is not accurate. You need to know who your mayor is and who your city council members are and stuff, and probably contact them to find out if it's legit. If you suspect that something that you see on one of these sites does not meet the smell test. So buyer beware. Oh my God.
Well, I mean, this is happening now. People are getting text messages from FedEx and the IRS, and neither of them send you text messages asking for your credit cards. You know, that's not happening. But people lose literally billions of dollars every year in fraud. And, you know, that people, I mean, you wonder, like, you know, who sent the prince from Zimbabwe, you know, who sent him money? And apparently people did, or they wouldn't have done it for all the years.
I know somebody. I played football with a guy who lost $1,500 from a paper.
Get out.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's horrifying.
Yeah.
Okay. You have one more.
Yeah. So this is from a Reuters exclusive from Joseph Menn, who reports that Apple has dropped plans to let iPhone users fully encrypt their backups in the iCloud service after the FBI complained that they were planning on doing this. So this reversal happened about 2 years ago and hasn't been previously reported, and it shows the extent to which the Apple has been willing to help U.S. law enforcement and intelligence agencies, despite their public profile of being the vanguard in protecting your privacy. You know, BL, that I've often been highly skeptical of that positioning that Apple has used, of them being so concerned about our privacy. So this article details in the first half of last year, the period that is covered by Apple's most recent semi-annual transparency report, U.S. authorities, armed with just regular court papers, had obtained full device backups or other iCloud content in 1,568 cases, covering about 6,000 accounts. The company said it turned over at least some data for 90% of the requests it received. It turns over data more often in response to secret U.S. intelligence court directives, and they sought content, which sought content from more than 18,000 accounts in the first half of 2019. Contrast, in October 2018, Google announced a similar system to Apple's dropped plan for securing backups, where users could back up their data to its cloud without trusting Google with its key. And Google gave no advance notice to governments and announced it when encryption was not in the news, so it would kind of fly under the radar. So Apple's whole positioning is, as I suspected, a positioning that was based on more marketing than
However, I still can encrypt my backup in the cloud. Maybe they don't respect that. Maybe that's a fake thing, but I still have the option to encrypt my backup. The thing about it is, and the thing that keeps people from doing it, is if you should, somehow not remember how to get into it, you'll never get your own data.
That's a legit issue, but encrypting the encryption of your content from your device to the iCloud, I'm sure is encrypted. That process is encrypted. The question is whether there's a backdoor to the iCloud, and that's the issue. And it appears that's the case.
Well, I mean, it's a thorny issue because in the instance of espionage and so on, I can't see how any company could really deny that request.
I completely agree with you 5 years ago.
What do you mean?
I agree with you that there's a legitimate case to be made that you need access to data in the case of terrorism and but it really depends on which administration you trust.
Absolutely. Yeah, things have changed. No two ways about that. Yeah. So that brings us to happier stuff, shiny objects.
It does, yes, indeed.
So this is an app that will verify email. It's called verifyemail.org. And the cool thing about it is you don't have to send an email to check the address. So it actually connects to the mail server and checks whether the mailbox exists or not. And you can check up to 100 emails a month for free. But in terms of formats, I mean, for small companies, it's usually first name @ organization.com. For larger, it's, first dot last name @ organization.com, or sometimes it's first initial dot last name, and sometimes it's first dot last name @ organization.com. There really aren't that many different ways that you can do email, but this will check for you. And it's, I checked some that I actually knew to make sure that it was accurate, and seems to be. And there's free for 100 a month are free.
So you would use this for what purpose?
You want to reach reporters, you want to reach prospects, you want to reach anybody. And, not everybody's putting their email on LinkedIn or on their website or wherever. So, and this is how you would be finding it.
All right. Spammer's delight. This is fantastic. I've been meaning to try this out, and I finally have, so I'm going to report on it. And this is Otter AI, which is a text transcription service. And I just tried it out today with one of our episodes. It's very clean out of the gate. So you upload your audio or video file, and it sucks it in and spits out a transcript after processing for about 15 minutes, I'd say. And the transcript I got was very clean. It identifies speakers, so it recognized that there were 2 speakers in one of our podcasts and labeled them as speaker 1, speaker 2, which you can then go in and relabel BL and David, as the case may be. you can export content, you export the transcript in text, so it exports as a TXT file. You can, during the export process, toggle between whether you want to include speaker names, include timestamps, merge same speaker segments, or export as a monologue. And the best thing about it, it's free for up to 600 minutes a month. So in our case, we've got what, 4 episodes a month at most an hour long. We've got plenty of room to do transcripts for free. You do have to go in and edit, and it has the kind of, you play it and it skips along through the transcript, and you edit as you go along, and it makes some mistakes, and the punctuation isn't all the best, but I'd say about 90% accurate. And what I'm curious to find out is whether, with more uploads of the same content of our episodes of our podcast, whether it's going to start recognizing UBL versus me and applying that and learning as it goes. But so far,
well, I don't know if it will do that. In my experience, it's about 85 to 90% accurate, but it's certainly a huge help. And 100,000 times easier than trying to type in while you're listening, and or paying somebody in some other land to do it for you. So I have a little project that I'm trying. I got my Bing business page, and it's a work in progress because I have to try and figure out how you make changes to the format. Like on the home page of it, it links to LinkedIn and YouTube and my blog and Twitter, but on the actual page, it's just showing tweets, and they're not exactly current. It's picking up YouTube and Instagram, but not LinkedIn, and I don't really want Instagram on my business page. So I'm reserving my judgment about how helpful it is. I'm going to take this episode and take advantage of their opportunity to promote a tweet for free, and they guarantee that it'll have 10,000 views in 24 hours. So I'm going to see if that moves any needles, but it's kind of interesting the way they did it. It's a knowledge graph in a different way. Mm-hmm. It's worth having. I mean, it can't hurt.
Sure. All right, cool. We'll check it out. I need to get on that.
Yep. It took a week, actually.
A week?
Yeah.
So you need to apply for it.
You have to apply for it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I had a link to apply for it in last week, and I have it on Twitter, so I can put it in the show notes.
How long did it take to set up?
Well, you don't set it up, matter of minutes. You fill out a form.
Format it for you?
Yes, exactly.
I don't like that.
And I don't like that at all. I don't like what they've done. But, on the other hand, like it's got LinkedIn, it's got, it has follow me on Twitter and YouTube. It has some recent videos there.
No, you need to have some, if it's your own personal profile, you need to have some control over what they're doing.
Well, that's what I haven't figured out yet, whether there's a way to change the layout. I haven't figured that out, but it doesn't look like there is. And they took, I guess they took my Twitter bio and used that in the picture that I have on Twitter. And so they have LinkedIn, they have Twitter, they have YouTube, and they have Instagram.
Yeah, well, Bing has
This is my business one, though. This is.
Yeah. Bing has had a deal with Twitter for a while. So the Twitter integration does not surprise me at all. But you know what? I don't know if I'm going to sign up because I do a lot of politics stuff on Twitter. So
well, me too, and that's what's there. And I want to be able to pick the tweets. But Google picks up my tweets in real time.
Yeah.
So, if you're looking me up, you're going to see my politics, and that's just the way it is. But this is, it's not pretty. Yeah. It's just there. But I'm figuring it can't hurt. It could help. We'll see. I think the interesting feature about it is actually the promotion of your social media.
Yep. Well, try that, and we'll see what the results are. That'll be interesting.
Exactly.
Now. So, speaking of politics, what do you got?
Well, Randy Rainbow, who is inimitable, has a new video called That Don, and it just came out, and it's got lines like, who can cheat like the Don? Who can eat like the Don? Who makes batshit crazy-ass facts like the Don? who might start World War III with a tweet like the Don? And it goes on, and he sings it, and he's so adorable. And now he's apparently touring across the United States and doing a live show. So if he comes to New York, I'm definitely going to go see him. But this one's adorable.
Well, he should give you a backstage pass because you're like a super fan, DL.
Good idea.
So mine is Fox News's coverage, quote unquote, of the impeachment trial. So I've been watching the coverage, and I occasionally flip through. I check out what everybody's covered, and the live coverage is MSNBC and CNN are covering routinely the live coverage. So whenever the Senate trial is in session, that's what the live feed is, and you can depend on it. When they cut out for breaks or for lunch or dinner or whatever, then the commentators come on and talk about what just happened, blah, 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 your typical cable news fare. But then I also flip through to see what Fox is up to. And Fox is, while the Democrats are making their case against Trump in the impeachment trial, they have been showing, when they do show it, it's a picture-in-picture view of the proceedings, but the sound is off. So their regular programming is full screen, and they have a small picture-in-picture of the Senate trial proceedings, but the sound is off. And then they have, the commentators, Tucker Carlson and Hannity, making snarky asinine comments about mocking Democrats and everything. They're not covering it at all. So they're basically hiding the proceedings from Fox News viewers. I will be interested to see what tomorrow looks like. I expect when Republicans are giving the rebuttal,
you're going to see
it will be wall-to-wall coverage of the proceedings, and it's insane. I mean, it's state TV. They're not pretending to give you news or any fair and balance my fucking ass. It's ridiculous. So anyway, that's
I mean, I really couldn't stomach watching. I settled for reading about it and excuse me, checking in on occasion. Excuse me, but watching them sleep and do crossword puzzles, and somebody's phone rang, and and they're bored. Really, they're bored. Of course, they're bored. They don't want to have witnesses.
Well, you don't see that. The Senate, C-SPAN, the Senate controls the camera angles, and C-SPAN only is showing the Democrats giving their case. And I will say that if you're interested in facts, if you're interested in logic, if you're interested in a cogent display of what happened and portrayal of what happened, then the Democrats' presentation, and this is not just me as a partisan talking, they put together an airtight case. Adam Schiff has been brilliant in presenting this case, and as have the other House managers presenting the case to the Senate. Schiff, though, has been far and above the best. He is a prosecutor, so he has plenty of experience doing this. But the Republicans' response is going to be, and it has been when they have responded, complaining about the process. They're not defending the president. They're not contesting any of the facts that the Democrats have put into play. They're just complaining of the process and attacking the Democrats. So it's clear that, the only way that the fix is already in. We know what the result is going to be.
He's going to walk.
Yeah. But the play is to the larger electorate, I think. And that's what they've done brilliantly, I think, is people who are paying attention and who are not already closed to the argument have a lot to chew on. So there you go.
Horrifying. Well, the daily numbers is really.
Yeah, let's get away from politics. Well, we can't get away from politics because the daily numbers is about partisan news consumption. This is from a Nieman Lab article by Laura Hazard Owen, who reports that Pew has released a new survey of 12,000 plus U.S. adults about their trust of 30 news sources. This was conducted in November and December of last year. And it found that for political and election news, there are greater proportions of Democrats and independents who lean Democratic, who express trust than distrust in 22 of the 30 news sources they asked about. Conversely, more Republicans and Republican leaners distrust than trust 20 of the 30 sources. So they have a graph here, and they ask percentage of people who trust each source for political and election news, and then they break it out by Democrats and Republicans, and they break out each party by liberal versus moderate or conservative leaning. So versus Democrats or versus Republicans who consider themselves conservatives or moderate to liberal leaning.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. So liberals.
Scary, however.
Liberals. 70% of liberals trust CNN. 66% trust both New York Times and PBS. 63% trust NPR, and 61% trust NBC News. Conversely, conservatives, 75% trust Fox News, 43% trust Hannity on radio, 38% trust Limbaugh on radio.
That old drug addict is still on the radio?
Oh my God, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
God.
24% trust ABC News, and CBS News, 23% trust that. There's a breakdown that goes into more detail on different outlets as well, which is fascinating read. Put a link to the show notes so everybody can check it out at beyondsocialmediashow.com/293.
You know, I have an elderly friend who is a rabid Republican, and she says, I watch Fox. I know what's going on. And she watches it all day long. And she believes that that's the news. And that's, it's all a matter of what comes in. But if all you do is look at what agrees with you, you're not watching the news. You're not getting the news.
So there's some interesting details about that in particular in this study, and it does find that there's a sizable percentage of conservatives who watch other news sources even though they distrust them. They still watch them. So that's not entirely the case, but I think the larger percentage of conservative viewers that are watching just a single source or Hannity and Limbaugh and Fox News and Breitbart, and they're getting all of their, and I mean, there have been studies that Fox News viewers are the least informed of current events than other people. Democrats, on the other hand, are more inclined to trust a wider variety of news sources, but it does everybody follow the link in the show notes because it does break down the degree of trust among a whole host of 30 different news sources between party affiliation. It's pretty fascinating.
Well, I look forward to reading that one. So that brings us to the end of episode 293 of the Beyond Social Media Show. And you can find us by just searching for Beyond Social Media Show or telling your smart speaker to play Beyond Social Media Show podcasts. You'll find links to everything we talked about at our blog, beyondsocialmediashow.com/293. And I am here with my charming co-host, David Erickson, who is D. Erickson on Twitter, D.E. Erickson on Instagram. His YouTube channel is eStrategy, and he blogs at the wonderful eStrategyblog.com, which you definitely want to take a look at. I am B.L. Ochman. I am What's Next on Twitter. I blog at What's Next blog. My YouTube channel is What's Next blog as well. And we are Beyond Social Media Show.com, and on Twitter we're at BS Media Show. So we will be back next week, same time, same bat channel.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks.